welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us. So I'm Isaac. We've got Cedric here, and yeah, we're ready to get started with the very first ICP conference talk.
Second live stream of the week. We had Jesse on, I think, just a couple of days ago when we talked a bit about this format, and I'm excited to be back and got some good feedback in the meantime. So I'm happy to be back online and go through this with you, Isaac.
Perfect, great. Well, before we get started digging into watching your presentation live on the internet for the very first time, is there anything that you would like to cover or go over?
I think just one thing that we did announce on Tuesday was that we launched our ICP Code and Stay community channels. And I say channels because there's different groups. There's a general one, there's an announcement channel, but then there's also sub-communities for investors in our ecosystem and node providers and people coming to EFCC for the meetup. So there's all these different sub-communities, and I think for the most part, I'm seeing great activity and lots of conversations going on already, and more people have joined than I expected would be the case in the first couple of days. But there's also been a few questions, and I thought maybe today is a good moment to quickly address those. And one of the questions that I've heard most often was, why did we choose WhatsApp to build our communities? And maybe to give people a bit of the behind the scenes, like I think WhatsApp was also controversial within our own team. I take all the responsibility here because I pushed for WhatsApp because I thought it offered the best mix of engagement and being able to include all different stakeholders. What do I mean by that? Well, for one, I think especially here in Europe, WhatsApp is incredibly popular and is the primary communication channel for a lot of people. So it's something that people will often see. They'll check like probably 20 times a day. And so it's very easy for them to engage in conversations, whereas something else like Telegram just isn't as widely used or is more often associated with just group messages piling up and people don't pay the same attention to every single message. And then second, in terms of inclusivity, I know within our team, there were strong opinions about using Discord, and we will use Discord for some of the subgroups. For example, for developers, I think Discord is a great place to have those technical conversations where you can use threads and it will show code correctly and you can have different roles and all of that. So I think it's a great place for developers, and most developers probably already use Discord. But then it's just very specific to certain subgroups. So for example, node providers or investors, they don't use Discord, at least not a lot of them do. And so we thought WhatsApp was the best or the most common denominator. One thing that also came up is not just WhatsApp versus Telegram or Discord, but another question we also faced was, why aren't we using a Web3 tool like OpenChat or District or Discover? And I think the answer here is that we want to support all those platforms, but again, like we got to start somewhere, and we figured the tool set and the fact that a lot of people in Web3, but also a lot of people that should get into Web3 and should know about the IC and should understand what kind of community we're building here, they just don't use those platforms yet. And since we're a young team and this is an early effort, we wanted to focus on one platform and figured WhatsApp was the right starting point. And I said this on Twitter as well, if there's people in the community that feel very passionate about helping us expand into other tools like Discover or Tagger or District, then please come and find either Isaac or me. Both our handles are down here, so you can easily find us and mention that to us. And we're looking for help from the community to build this community out.
Great. And I can add a little bit of my thoughts there. So I kind of early on was one of the ones fighting WhatsApp, just because I'm not typically a user of WhatsApp very much. But it's all about meeting people where they are. I think the thing that sold me on it was realizing that Cedric is in this circle of investors, and we want to create a community of investors where they're inviting other investors into our ecosystem and connecting and talking about projects. So like if WhatsApp is the tool where investors can more easily and like invite one another in there, it also just seems like a great tool for extremely busy people. So for like our founders group, our node providers group, our investors group, it just seems like a tool that they're already using that reaches them during their busy schedules. And once we build up these platforms that might be on Web 2, I mean, our whole goal is to focus on Web 3, obviously, right? So we, a lot of different platforms, including those on Web 3, are part of our long-term strategy. We're definitely putting Esteban to work there with quite a big communities roadmap. But yeah, no, it's exciting to see it take off, and I'm excited to see what the next few weeks bring. And going into that, Cedric, did you want to talk about a stablecoin project, or?
I will in a second. I just wanted to say we're very interested in the discourse, and like this feedback was great that we did not clearly communicate why we chose WhatsApp as the place to build our community. And so if you have comments or questions or ideas, then either leave them in the comments right now, and maybe we can even pick them up while we talk here before we're going to live stream the presentation that I gave at ICP.CC, or send us a DM or come to one of the community groups and spark that conversation. For us, it's not about being right. For us, it's just about making the community click. And I think the conference was such a great experience that now we're just trying to replicate that same experience online and make more internet friends into real friends. So yeah, the other thing that I spend a lot of time thinking about, Code and State's goal is to make it possible for anyone that is new to the ecosystem to sit down on a Saturday morning and build an application over the weekend. And by Sunday evening, not only will they have deployed their first application on the internet computer, but we also want them to earn their first dollar on the internet computer. So we think that if we can get to that point, then the growth will be unlimited. There's going to be so many cool ideas that are being tried out on the IC that I'm just excited to see all those ideas come to life. And one crucial piece of reaching that goal, of course, is that you can earn your first dollar, meaning you can earn something that represents $1 of value. And currently in the IC ecosystem, we mostly have volatile tokens. Hopefully at some point we'll have CK-USDC and CK-USDT and all the other stable coins that exist on Ethereum. But we also believe that it'd be healthy for the system to have a native over-collateralized stablecoin. And that's why we're actively working with teams that have already built stablecoins and teams that are currently building on the IC, some of them more from a business perspective, others more from a technical perspective. And we're looking to assemble a team that builds the best stablecoin on the IC. The IC has so many beautiful properties that make building these redemptions and liquidations so much more efficiently than they are possible on for example, Ethereum. So it's a very exciting project, but we're still missing a few key components. So if there's someone watching this that is excited about building a stablecoin on the IC, please reach out to me and we'll take it from there.
Great. Yeah. I'm always been a big fan of like Liquidity, for example, and I'll just love to see, what innovation and ICP technology can bring to that space, and what like the ICP answer is to a truly robust stablecoin project.
Well, so for one, I think one of the key innovations, right, that the foundation recently enabled with CK-BTC is that we could build one that's backed by Bitcoin natively, which I find pretty exciting as an idea. And then, of course, from there, we can take it one step further and say, maybe it can be multi-collateral, so you can deposit CK ETH, CK Bitcoin, and ICP at some point. Staked ICP is another one. If we all know Paul is working on staked ICP. So that's an interesting project as well, maybe one that could be considered. So there's all these like different directions where you can take this. And generally, I'm very excited about seeing this stablecoin come alive, but it's also going to be a lot of work. So if anyone's looking for a good challenge, we might have one for you.
Yeah, and if you just want to join the community, there's more information in this QR code here, and just be part of Code and State's kind of search for the ideal and best stablecoin project for the IC. And so going and shifting gears into the topic of the day, why don't you share a little bit about what your conference talk was about and kind of why you chose that topic?
Yeah, so my conference talk at ICP.CC was titled How to Pitch the Internet Computer. And I chose that topic because I think it's one of the key challenges that we have to solve as an ecosystem. We have to figure out how to explain the internet computer within 2, 5, 10, or 15 minutes, depending on the audience, in a way that it resonates with people. Because what was built with the internet computer, what Dfinity has built, is such a powerful piece of technology that sometimes it's kind of hard to go layer by layer and still seem believable. Like a lot of people that I talk to, they're like, yeah, so when do you think this will be live? I'm like, no, this is live. This has been running for the last 2 years. All of this you can go out and use right now. So long story short, I think it's incredibly crucial for all of us to figure out how to explain the internet computer to someone in Web 2, someone in Web 3, someone in the Ethereum ecosystem, someone even in the ICP ecosystem. There's quite a bit of education that we can do internally as well. And that's why I wanted to pitch my way of explaining the internet computer and then get feedback, and that was great. A lot of people came to me after the talk and gave me inputs on how to adjust the talk, what they liked, what they didn't like, and insofar it's been a success for me.
Great, and I definitely understand the struggle of just trying to communicate what the IC is, because I'm probably not alone in trying to explain to my wife like why I'm so involved with this thing and what it is, and giving her the words that she can use to describe to my father-in-law like what is this thing he's doing now full time. And I being part of this journey, I think one of the it's all about finding the right words. I think one of the most useful phrases in your talk for me is decentralized servers. I think that's just something that's so much more easily understood than starting off with some word that's more custom like canisters. And so I think there's a lot of value in your talk. I can't wait to kind of have it be live. Right after this live stream, we're also going to be publishing just the recording on its own under videos in a few hours. It'll be popping up there. So if there is somebody who you've been wanting to find the right words to share what the IC is with them, use this as a resource and share it out there. So looking back, Cedric, is there anything that you would change or rethink about your presentation before we play it right here?
I mean, I think about it almost daily, right? And
you too.
Because that's my daily challenge, like trying to get more people excited about the IC and explaining it to them. And so there's definitely elements. Like one thing that I skipped during the talk that we're going to watch is the on-stage demo. There were kind of two reasons. A, it was the last talk of the day, and I didn't want to let people fall asleep by having them watch a video. So I probably should have done a live demo. And then second, also, Juno presented earlier that day, David Albusco, who built Juno. Juno is kind of a Firebase on the IC, meaning a very simple interface to deploy front ends and create databases on the IC. And I think he did extremely well, so I just referenced that. But what I typically do in conversation with others is that I also try and show them that it's real. Because there's one part like that's almost like easy to just talk about it and give references and say that it's capable of A, B, and C. But seeing it live is just so much more powerful. So that's what I typically do when I explain it now, is I try to have demos ready and quickly jump back and forth between my slides and some code and show people that this is all real.
Great. Yeah, and then, by the way, Juno, for those that don't know, just within the last, I think, day or a couple of days, David just released a drawing app using Juno. So go on Twitter and check that out. He's definitely doing some fantastic work for the ecosystem, and he'll be on this live stream within a few weeks because he was a speaker at the conference. So with that, I think we're ready to go ahead and play. Does that sound good, Cedric?
Yeah, just one thing. We got some questions here. Just one that I quickly wanted to answer. So Icaria asked if writing a fully working POC dApp in a weekend is our aim. Then how important are low-code environments or platforms like Juno and ICME? I think they're doing incredible work. Both, I'm a huge fan of both Juno and ICME. As I just said, like I think it's so great what David has done and how he simplified the process of deploying. And we're also experimenting currently by approaching different Eve developers and showing them how to deploy their front end on the IC and seeing if they prefer doing it via Juno or doing it directly via the command line via tutorial. So I think they're very complementary, but ultimately both platforms obviously limit a bit what you can do. So Juno's aim clearly is front-end developers that build the logic and the kind of the meat of the application into the front end. And if you wanted to build something like a new type of social network, then I think you're not going to get around coding it yourself. And that's why I think it's also important that people can not only use those platforms to interact with the IC, but they also have a very easy way to get started building on the IC natively with Motoko or Rust, Hazel, or Kybra. It's cool that there's already 4 languages now. Yeah. So that'd be my answer, Icaria. I think they're super important. They're great to have, but there also needs to be a way for people to go and deploy by themselves without relying on a middle platform.
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways to approach the problems and of the future, and a lot of these people involved with these different solutions will be on our live stream. So each week coming up here, and let's get started with the very first one. And I'm going to hit play here, and everyone, let's watch Cedric's first on-internet recording of how to pitch the internet computer.
First of all, big round of applause again for everyone that pitched to us. It can take a lot to get up on the stage and share ideas that are new and unproven. Like, that's what's so fun, but also sometimes difficult about building innovative products and services. Also, big round of applause for our investors. Thank you for the commitment, your experience. And then last but not least, please get up quickly and let's give a big round of applause for our audience. You guys have been amazing so far. I know it's a long day. It's amazing to finally be in one and the same room. These last few years have been special in any sense of the word. Yeah, feel free to sit down again. I just wanted to see if everyone's still alive, because some of you look so concentrated. And I think it's great that we've made it through almost the entire first day of our conference without actually talking too much about the internet computer itself. It shows that there's lots of activity, lots of stuff being built on the IC, and that's what really excites me. But at the same time, I also want to step into the shoes of someone that's pitching up here and give my version of how I perceive the IC and how I try to explain it. Because while I agree, and I've had lots of conversations today already about this, that the best way to pitch the IC is to just build on it and build something really cool that lots of people want to use and drive adoption up. At the same time, I'm really focused on making life easier for builders. Why? Because I think for every one builder that we can onboard that builds the future of Uber, the future of the music industry, the future of DeFi on the IC, for every one of those builders, we can onboard thousands of new users. And that's why I'm so passionate and have always been passionate ever since I helped start the foundation back in 2016 and focused on developer adoption leading up to our first planned launch date in 2018. Ever since then, I've been thinking about what should we use the IC for and why is it so unique? And over the years, I've had a few opportunities to rethink that and kind of take a step back and also look at the landscape, think about whether I rather want to spend my time building applications. But every single time I've come back to the IC because I think it is so unique, it's so different, and it deserves to be seen through. There's so much cool tech that the foundation, this great team has built over the years. I just want to see it through. I want there to be thousands of applications that are being built on it. And so over the years, I got to wear a few different hats. I mentioned it, I helped start the foundation in 2016. Before that, I was already an entrepreneur for about 15 years in Web 2. I discovered blockchain kind of by coincidence in 2011 when one of my teammates at a fintech startup that we were building, he asked to borrow my laptop over lunch to mine some Bitcoin. And he still owes me some Bitcoin. But that's when I first went down the rabbit hole and kind of never left that rabbit hole since. I got so excited about decentralization and what it makes possible for us. And I'll tell you why in a second. But before that, I then met Dom in 2016, and Tom and Timo and the original team at the foundation helped build out the foundation. I became a node provider. I started a fund, Tomahawk, in 2019, and started investing into ecosystem projects. And then also last summer, Artia, who's also here, and I decided to start Code and State. Why? Because we saw that there's gaps in this ecosystem, community building, the focus on developers, on builders, making it super easy to get started, making education about Motoko and other components of the IC more accessible. And we were both so passionate about this that we decided to start Code and State. We made that decision just about a year ago, really got up and running towards Q3 last year. Seb joined me, Isaac joined me at the beginning of this year. Now we also have Ben, who runs TalentDB with us. And we're hiring, we're finding more people. We want more of you to join us if you're passionate about making it easier for builders to build on the IC. So that's what I'm doing, and as I said, lots of hats that all kind of have IC on it. And the reason why I'm so passionate about the IC always starts with this question: does decentralization matter? And it's an emotional question. If you hang out at a bar tonight, or if you go to any Web3 event or meetup, and you ask people that question, you get all kinds of answers. You get the kind of maxis that say, yeah, everything should be decentralized just by principle. On the other end of the spectrum, you have people that are kind of delusioned, and they say, yeah, I thought so at some point, but it's not really realistic, so I've kind of given up on that. And then you have a wide range in between. The way I answer the question for myself, and always have answered it, is decentralization matters not because of decentralization, but because of the properties that it gives us. So if we see decentralization as a tool or a tool set that we can apply to different problems, challenges, opportunities in our lives, we get really positive properties that we can apply to those challenges. Transparency, immutability, you see most of them listed here. And while we didn't disrupt everything, when we look at the internet gave us properties as well, that information became available anywhere for very little money, very cheaply. And not everything took off on the internet in the early days, but some things did. They were proof of concepts. And the same holds true in Web3. I think all of us in here would agree that people have taken these properties and they've applied them to finance, and they've proven that we can build a new type of finance, a decentralized finance, that is not only different, but it's also better in many dimensions. And that's great. And I think finance is a very important part of all our lives, whether we want it or not. But there's so much more out there. I talked a bit about education earlier. There's governance systems. There's systems to make it more fair and transparent for people to make decisions together and enforce them. There's healthcare, real estate, probably 50 or 60 more industries than what I've listed here. So the question is, why haven't we disrupted all those industries yet? Like, why have we only applied it to finance so far? And I'm just old enough to have gone online via these things here. They made this very ugly sound when you went online, and it took forever to download a game or a short video clip. But it worked. This is how we went online in 1992, 1993, probably all the way till the end of the 90s. Do you remember what the internet looked like back then? For the most part, it was text-based services. And some of it, we had like early versions of a browser for Yahoo. You could go and load that in a browser. But the first few emails that I sent were from the command lines. I had to go talk to a telnet server, log in, then give it my subject line. And it was complicated. I would argue it was a lot more complicated than using Web3 today, where we have hardware wallets and we have a UX that's not really intuitive. But that's the stage that we're at. And the reason why we've only disrupted finance is because that's really the proof of concept. That's what we can do, and it's so obvious that we have to disrupt that with the tools that we've been given. But I'm waiting for the broadband internet age of Web3. So once broadband internet became available, that's when the UI and the UX of the internet became so much more usable. 2004, 2005, Facebook became available. 5 years later, Instagram. All websites basically became interactive. Everything became so much more alive. And that's the age that I'm working towards for Web3, because I think that's when we'll see all these other industries being disrupted. Why hasn't it happened yet? Or what's the state in Web3 that we're in? The way I look at it is that most of these layer ones that we all use and that we have access to and that are great as a proof of concept, they're blockchain databases. Why do I say that? Because ultimately we use them to store and retrieve tiny bits of data. The images go live somewhere else. We heard from Bob this morning that there is ways, of course, to even put images on Bitcoin, but that's clearly not what it's made for. And with these blockchain databases, what we can do is build decentralized ledgers. So that lends itself to finance. But what I really want to do is see the vision of this blockchain computer come alive, because that's where we can build these decentralized web apps. Why is it a problem? And coming back to my question, does decentralization matter? Well, because if something is almost completely decentralized, it's still centralized, right? There's still a point of attack where it could be stopped. There's a point that's not transparent. There's a place where there might be a middleman that makes it inefficient. If we look at the Web3 stack of a typical application today, take Uniswap or whatever application you're using day in, day out. This is the reality. This is what the stack looks like for the most part. You have a tiny bit of data, a database that is decentralized in the best sense of the word, but most of the stack lives on the traditional Web2 environment and infrastructure. And for me as a user, that's a problem, right? Because yes, I can go and I can sit down and I can read the documentation and I can, the same way I sent an email in 1993, I can probably figure out how to communicate with the database directly and formulate my requests in the command line, send those off and interpret what comes back. But realistically, I don't want to do that, and most people cannot do that because they don't have the tools or they don't have the knowledge or they don't have the time. And so what I resort to as a user is I use Chrome or any other browser, I send a request off, and as soon as my request is sent off, I don't really understand what's happening now. Because the counterparty, this front end that I'm interacting with, that's not on decentralized infrastructure. It's not transparent. So I don't know what's happening on the back end now, and worst case, what I get back could be completely manipulated since I don't directly talk to the database. So what's happening that with the internet computer that could change that? Well, for me, I think about Web3 in 3 generations. Generation 1 is Bitcoin. Bitcoin gave us coins, meaning a digital scarce asset, totally fascinating that we can have that in an environment without a centralized party. But that's it, it gave us coins. Then the Generation 2, Ethereum, Solana, Near, all these other great layer 1s, that are all a bit more performant or a bit cheaper, a bit easier to use. What they gave us is contracts, meaning I can now have those coins or tokens and I can send them back and forth, and I can also automate parts of what I want to do with them. But that's it. It's still a database, and the equivalent to that in MySQL would be procedures. And the reason why I've been so excited and focused on the IC ecosystem ever since I heard Dom talk about this in 2016 is that the internet computer is the only Gen 3 blockchain. Why? Because it doesn't give us coins or contracts, it gives us canisters. And canisters, the way I look at it, are just decentralized servers. And with these decentralized servers, we can not only run a database, but we can run all the other parts of the stack as well. We can go and we can do the hosting on the internet computer, we can do the compute, we can do the media storage, there's solutions for authentication. We don't need a connector. And of course, and that's the best part about it, we also don't have to completely rebuild what's already been done in Web3. We can interface with those databases that exist. We talked about CK-BTC earlier today. At least outside, I talked to multiple people about CK-ETH. And once we generalize the ability to generate these keys and use them to interface with other blockchains, we can basically interface with all of Web3. The IC is very complementary. It's not replacing anything that's already there. I think if there's a lot of value and liquidity in Ethereum, there's no point in trying to move that to another platform. The consequence of this is that, A, not only is it a lot more secure if I can run all these components in one and the same infrastructure. That's, by the way, the reason why AWS has such a large market share, right? Because you have all these services in one given platform that's all secured and easy to communicate in a safe and secure manner between the different components. But I can then, since now all components are decentralized, all components earn these positive qualities. They're all transparent, immutable. I can transparently verify that what I'm sending to the system actually happens. And I think for me, that's the big power of the IC. Now, since we have these decentralized servers, we can, of course, do things with them that servers can do. And number one thing that I think is extremely powerful is we can directly serve web browsers. All of you know this. I always bring up Discover or other social apps that we have on the IC as an example. It's great. I bring up the website. It loads directly from the IC. There's no middleman. There's no place where that data could have been manipulated. And it's almost too good, because I always find myself trying to find ways to explain that this comes directly from the blockchain and demonstrate that, especially since we added the custom domains. That's one key feature that I think is extremely powerful about using decentralized servers. Another one is that we rely a lot less on oracles, meaning systems like Chainlink that are expensive, they're kind of clunky, they're not very elegant, and unfortunately they tend to break down or at least degrade, especially during those times when they're most needed, when the price moves quite quickly. I love the ability that my servers, decentralized servers, they can not only communicate to other IC servers, but they can talk to any Web2 or Web3 server through a well-established protocol, which is HTTP. Then, of course, the scaling. I think we talked about it a couple times today. The fact that there's no one canister that's different from any other, and we can scale in a very frictionless manner. Reverse gas, for me, is one of the design decisions that I've always really admired Dom for, that he kind of foresaw all these years back that he's going to be able to drive costs down and build a system that will work so well with such a low cost that it becomes feasible for the developer to prepay for the compute, kind of the similar or the same model that we have in Web2, which then enables, not only much better conversion, but also lots of different business models instead of just charging users for every single operation. Bridges, we've talked about quite a bit already today. Absolutely fascinating. And then last but not least, one thing that I realize we as an IC community get very used to is the on-chain governance piece. That's not something that's a given in most other ecosystems. The fact that any of us can put up a proposal. And we've played a bit with this with, I don't know, who voted yes for the ICP community conference proposal? Did any of you see that? So I'm not encouraging anyone to misuse the NNS in that manner, but I think it's such a great and powerful system that every single chain that the system goes through runs through this governance process, and all of us who have ICP and decide to stake some of it can participate in that via voting. Okay, so I've done a lot of talking, and normally here I would jump into a quick demo. Seb was so kind to record this video for me, but in the interest of time, I'm going to skip it today. So two reasons. One is interest of time, because I know we all want to get a bit of sun in before the sun sets, and it's been a long and intense day. But the second reason is also that usually I want to try and shine light on how easy it is. But since David showcased Juno this morning and made it look even easier, this is going to look complicated. So I'm just going to jump over it. Okay, what is built on the IC? I mean, sometimes I just have to remind myself and even look at that slide by myself because I'm just so amazed, like the breadth of applications that are being built. I know we don't have a ton of like news coverage on our ecosystem sometimes. So it's not that we're surfing TechCrunch and we see, oh wow, there's an Uber alternative built on the IC, or wow, there's this social network being built on the IC. We're working on this. We'll get there. We'll make them all regret that they didn't cover us earlier. But I always really like looking at this slide because I think it's so cool to see how diverse the ecosystem is that's already there, and I can only wait to see what the next 1,000 applications are going to look like. So quick round of applause for all of you for building. Now, one question that comes up every single time when I pitch the IC is, yeah, that's all fine, but it's not decentralized. And I don't know where it comes from. Or, I mean, of course, I've done lots of research, I've had lots of conversations about this, but I don't believe it's true, the criticism. I think it stems from a lot of misinformation and maybe from system design that's old or a state of the IC that is a long time ago. The way I look at it, so the first question I always ask back is like, what does decentralization mean to you? And then I discovered that for different people, decentralization means very different things, and they associate different rights or different functions with it. The most common one is, I cannot run a node on the IC, hence it is not decentralized. And while it was true that when the IC was going through Genesis, there was a relatively small set of node providers. In the last few months, there's been multiple providers that have submitted an NNS proposal and got onboarded in a very decentralized manner. The other way people look at decentralization is who makes the decisions, who can actually decide which version is going to be adopted, what changes are going to be implemented, and in the worst case, could potentially reverse something that was done on the chain. And I call that the political decentralization. For both of these stats are from this morning. I finished my slides this morning. Don't tell Isaac, because I know he's been running after everyone to submit slides at least 10 days before the conference. For me, this looks great. So we have 82 different node providers. I know a few, but I know far from 20% of them. Let's not speak about half of them. There's over 550 machines that are currently up and running, and there's almost 1,000 nodes in total that are still providing ways for the network to grow and become more active. And often the criticism that I hear is that, yes, okay, even now that I can submit a proposal and I can theoretically become a node provider, it's not feasible for me. I'm never going to be able to run a node because it costs so much to buy it, and then I have to put it in a professional data center to run it, which is associated with lots of cost, and I just can't get there. To which I say that's fair. I understand why the decision was made to design the IC in such a way, because that's where we get all this performance from. That's why we can run things like Discover or all the, I think Tom mentioned that he's a big fan of the video and media platforms that are being built on the IC. And that's the trade-off, right? Like it comes with professional infrastructure to some degree. What I would love to see is that at some point we can build nodes in a very simple manner that we can connect to the network and verify the transactions that are happening. Maybe we're not earning any rewards because we're not keeping up with the professional requirements for those full nodes, but so that anyone, even with like a Raspberry Pi, can verify that whatever is being recorded on the network is recorded in a fair, transparent, and immutable manner. And then the second piece that I often mention to anyone that brings this up is that the boundary node program is being rolled out, and those are going to offer incentives as well. Those are going to be much cheaper, and we also want them to be a lot more decentralized. And those are great ways to get involved in the node provider program. And then for the second part of the conversation, I know even within the community, I often have conversations about who controls the votes and who decides what's going through on the NNS and what doesn't go through. And so I messaged Kyle Langham, who now works at the foundation and has done a lot of really good data analysis on the IC. And apart from that, is also a very likable podcast host together with Jesse. And what he sent me is this research. This is from February 2023, so just 2-3 months old. And what he found is that it would take at least 134 different people. I haven't had time to dive into like the definition of person here, but it is a lot more decentralized by now than it used to be at Genesis. And so that was great news for me, because I think now I finally have a really good answer and a defensible answer for people that have questions about this. All right, so lots of really positive things to say about the IC. That's why I'm excited. But of course, I also realized that any piece of new technology is kind of hard to build on. And that's the motivation behind Code and State. We realized that there are challenges that are just natural in anything that's coming, that's new and kind of rethought, that offers new paradigms. It was the same way with Ethereum back in 2013, 14, 15, when not a lot of people understood how to build on there and what the specifications and the documentation looks like. So those are just a few of the challenges that we've identified by talking to many of you and asking you what would make it easier for you to build, or why is it hard and difficult to build on the IC right now. And so that's why we decided to start Code and State. And I just quickly want to tell you a few words about what Code and State is and how we interpret this term venture studio, what it is, how it works, and how it might be able to help you as well. First of all, this is our goal. We want to make it so easy to build on the IC that you can get started on a Saturday morning, know almost nothing about the IC. You sit down, you read about it, you watch a video, you follow a tutorial, whichever way you choose. You build an application, something extremely simple, you deploy it within that weekend, and before Sunday night, not only is your application live and has users, but you've also earned your first dollar. And that component is extremely powerful because once we can give creators and builders ways to earn money on the IC, that's when it's going to be unstoppable. That's when we're going to have like hundreds of new builders come in. How are we going to get there? How do we think about moving closer to that situation? It's through incubation and acceleration. RT and I, we want to build a place that great entrepreneurs and great builders can come to. They can join us, they get support from us for the next 1 to 2 years. And you will get support in the form of money for your team, for your salary. We will pay for your runway, for the tools that you need. But not only that, we will help you with all those challenges that come with building that aren't directly related to your product. We want you to be fully focused on building the best application, the best tool for builders on the IC, while we help abstract away some of the challenges that come with building in Web3. We had a few conversations or talks from lawyers this morning, and I was very positively surprised about the questions that were asked because it is a big topic. Structuring your company the right way from a legal and tax and regulatory perspective is something that's not easy. And then apart from that, we help you, of course, with our network of advisors. The two of us have invested in quite a few Web3 and Web2 companies. We'll help you with strategy, hiring, recruiting, and all of that. And then the best part, we're not looking to like lock you in. You don't have to come to us and then stay with Code and State. We want to find the best entrepreneurs, and that's why we want to provide you with a real alternative to seed funding. So instead of going out and raising $500,000 or $1 million by yourself and financing your runway for the next 1 to 2 years, we give you that runway, and we let you keep most of the company. We want you to be successful on your own and leave Code and State after that period. Go out and raise the next funding round by yourself. What are we doing so far? We've been up and running for just over 6 months. We have a number of initiatives. There's Motoko Bootcamp, which Seb talked about a bit earlier. There's TalentDB, which Ben runs, and I'll have a slide about that in a second. Solid State. Solid State is a firm that helps you be sure that your code works before you go live. So once you have your version 1.0 built, or you're planning your SNS launch, you can come to Solid State, and Solid State will have some very bright minds look over your code, test it, model a few scenarios, pen test it, and make sure that we find bugs and problems in your code before you go live and potentially create challenges for your tokens and other launches. Then we're working on a stablecoin, because obviously if we want you to get paid within the weekend and earn your first dollar, you need to be able to earn $1 on the IC. And then last but not least, we're here, we have this community conference. It's our youngest venture. We only decided to fully lean into it in January, and I'm just super happy with the work that Isaac and Patricia and Esteban and Ricardo and everyone else has done. So a quick round of applause for them. Motoko Bootcamp, I'm not going to say too much. Seb ran the last edition just last week. He basically finished Sunday, and Monday he jumped on a flight to come here. A great way not only to learn Motoko, but also to connect with other builders and people that are interested in creating disruption in the ecosystem. And then TalentDB, Ben, if you haven't met him yet, there's a booth right outside the door. He's the person to go to if you're looking to hire more talent in the ecosystem. And that's it. If you're excited about what I'm excited about, which is to make this possible, to make it easy, to make it feasible for hundreds and thousands of apps to be built on the IC, come talk to me or any.
All right. That was great. That was great. So yeah, let's dive right into the Q&A. So those of you, if you're on YouTube and you have questions, please leave a comment. Our platform isn't able to pick up comments from Twitter, so you need to go to Code and State YouTube, and we can feature them right up here and give you answers. I'd like to go ahead and start with this one.
And then I'll keep an eye on Twitter. I'll open Twitter just in case someone has questions there. We might be able to spot them as well.
Oh, sounds good. Sounds good. So yeah, Steve has a question. If I have an idea and I want to implement it through the IC without any knowledge of coding or programming, where should I go? It's a great question.
I think that's a great question. Yeah, I would say come join one of the WhatsApp groups that we have for the community and just pitch your idea or ask for a developer. Currently, because we already ran 2 Motoko bootcamps this year, we have about 3,000 people that have at least completed part of the course and about 400 people that have graduated from the course. So there's lots of builders that are looking for things to build, and all of them were invited to join the WhatsApp communities just a couple of days ago. So it might take a bit of time for all of them to join, but I think that's a great place to come and brainstorm ideas, pitch, but also just ask for talent that is interested to build anything. And then, of course, if you were looking to teach yourself coding and build this yourself because you think it'd be fun, then keep an eye out for announcements on the Code and State Twitter channel, because we'll soon announce the next Code and State bootcamp, the Motoko bootcamps and other bootcamps.
Yes, and if you have a little bit of funding, maybe it's a contract work is something you could start out with. We have TalentDB. There's quite a large talent pool there, so it's a great fast way to get talent if you're looking to fill a role. But I would also just reiterate, Motoko Bootcamp, all of the content is available on GitHub, so you don't have to wait till the next bootcamp. You could also just start learning on your own. And frankly, I would recommend that anyone wanting to do anything entrepreneurial should not be afraid to at least dip their toes in coding, just because it's a great mindset and skill. Even if you're not going to be a coder for your career, if you're going to be an entrepreneur, it's just extremely useful, right? To have in your back pocket. So great question, Steve. Thank you so much for that. And we've got another one here from Icaria Systems. Any plans for an APAC community conference and bootcamp in a central location like Singapore? It would make it more feasible coming from Australia.
Yeah, so I mean, Isaac, happy for you to jump in as well. But I think leading up to this first conference, we thought, similar with the WhatsApp communities, one of our questions was, how can we make this as inclusive as possible? And we opted for Miami for 2 reasons. One, because it's easy to reach from South America, Europe, and of course, the US or North America. And then second, also because we were able to have the conference the 2 days before Bitcoin Miami. That's another big industry event. And so there were lots of people that were traveling to Miami anyway and could just come by and see us in Miami the 2 days before. But you do bring up a good plan, or a good point. We know that there's a very active community in Asia, and we're actually talking to someone who's advising us on where to go and what to host. And so there's a good chance we'll be in Singapore sometime later this year. Maybe not for a full-blown conference just yet, but at least for a meetup to bring people together and connect in real life.
Yeah, and also like this initiative in a way is kind of like doing these weekly live streams as we share the content. This is our way of like making the conference itself more inclusive to everybody who wasn't able to make it there in person. So we're all re-experiencing the ICP community conference right now together, and we'll get the chance to keep doing that over the next several weeks as we have different guests coming on board. So, as we wait to see if anyone else has any more questions, I just want to bring this up real quick. So these talks will be happening every single Thursday at 8 a.m. PST, 11 a.m. PST, EST, I can't read it here, and 5 p.m. CET. And be sure with YouTube to subscribe, like, and hit the bell icon so that you get notified next time we go live. Next week, we've got Bob Bodley talking about ordinals. So if you're excited, someone who's excited about ordinals and all the possibilities between Bitcoin and ICP, that's definitely a talk you don't want to miss. We're going to have him on the show, and you'll be able to shoot him all of your questions live. And that's coming up.
I think this is going to be a bit of a fun adventure, right? Because like even today, Isaac lost power, so he had to go to his parents' house to find Wi-Fi and light and electricity. And then I'm probably going to be traveling within the next 3-4 months as we're having these conversations. And so there's a good chance it's going to be either early morning or in the middle of the night at some point. But Isaac and I really like the feedback that we've been getting on Tuesday, all the great questions that are coming up here. And if you have anything that you think we could do better or should do differently, or anyone that we should bring up here as well to discuss certain talks, then feel free to reach out to us and leave comments here.
Yeah. And also, regarding your talk, yesterday I was able to play around and get a couple clips of it out. So there's one clip where it's right at the heart of it, where he talks about ICP having basically our smart contracts for decentralized servers, and showing how the full stack can finally be on chain. So that's one of our TikToks. I think that was the very first one. And then the second one is just describes the format of Code and State, because I think a lot of people struggle to understand what Adventure Studio is. And I felt like that gives some great insights. So there's 2 short videos on TikTok. I've been the one internally pushing for TikTok. So please show your support for that initiative. I think it's a low-hanging fruit. It's a way for our ecosystem to really get out there. So I'm hoping that we can leverage that TikTok algorithm to make some more ICP converts here.
And then
right.
Before we sign off here, please don't forget to give this video the like, to hit the like button. That would really help us to get picked up by the algorithm. And of course, if you don't want to miss any of the upcoming talks, hit the subscribe button. That way you will always get a notification once we schedule the next live stream. And hopefully that's it. Hopefully you all had a good time. Thanks so much, Isaac, for co-hosting. And with that, have a beautiful day, and we'll talk to you soon.